Okay, good morning. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning for a reopening discussion. This morning, Dr. Lutinsky and Dr. Wilson will review the essential components of our reopening plan with particular focus on the middle school and high school. They will address the hybrid model and the home learning day and what that looks like. They will also focus on the remote opt-in and some particular activities to the middle high school. We've had some questions about activities and sports and clubs and things like that, extracurricular. So they'll address that a little bit as well and answer any questions that parents have. If you look up in the corner, the right hand corner of your screen, you will see an email address. So please submit your questions during this conversation. We will take those questions and answer them for you. So right now, I'd like to turn this over to Dr. Lutinsky and Dr. Wilson. Good morning, Dr. Lutinsky, Dr. Wilson. You may begin.
Thanks, Dr. Ferraro. Good morning, everybody. As Dr. Ferraro mentioned, if you look on your screen right now, we have the Q&A at rynec.org email for questions. So this presentation today is specifically for secondary learning. So this is going to be middle school and high school. There will also be an elementary school presentation with Tara Goldberg from Daniel Warren and Mike Scarantino from Effie Bellows next Friday at this same time. So there are a couple questions that we got regarding elementary education, which they'll be handling at that time. But that same Q&A at rynec.org can be used for the elementary presentation as well. So to go back to the beginning real quickly, some of the questions we've gotten revolved around our rationale and decision-making process for why we are opening the way we are. So the New York State Department of Education gave us a directive to plan for different eventualities. A full reopen, which would mean everybody back in school. And for us, that would really be everybody back in, probably with masks, a restriction on some mass gatherings and extracurriculars and things like that, but a full reopen. Full remote, meaning what we did in the spring, wherein everyone's home. Our plan for remote learning, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation, certainly is going to be different than what we had in the spring. One of the things that we heard loud and clear from our community during the spring was that there are certain aspects of the remote plan, particularly two things. Number one, the degree of live interactivity between student and teacher. So we've dramatically changed that. And the other is from a management standpoint for families, parents and children at home, the regularity of the schedule made it difficult to manage things. So the remote plan that we have is going to be far more regular. And then the hybrid option. The hybrid option is a mix of the two. And the reason that we're going with our hybrid, even though we've been allowed to reopen, is that the reopen has come with the requirement to social distance. So we may reopen, but we have to reopen with social distance. So depending on how many students you have in your district or school, you may have a lot of space or a little space. So for RYNEC, reopening with social distance means that we can fit about half of our student population in each of our buildings. So the hybrid option is how we have to go for our reopening, because we all want our kids to come back, and that's a big first step. So on the screen you'll see a little sub bullet, because one of the things we've been asked a lot about lately is an option for remote learning. So if I'm not comfortable sending my child into school under the hybrid option, can I keep my child home and get remote learning? So real quickly on that, when the New York State guidance came out, it specifically had a requirement that any child in a high medical risk category would have or should have the option to stay home and get full remote learning. So that was always in the plan. It pointedly did not say anything about anyone else. However, in the governor's latest uh, discussion, he kind of opened the door for us to be able to offer remote learning to other students. So yes, Rhinebeck will have a remote option available for families. So we sent out a Google form, Dr. Wilson. That was on August 1st, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So on August 1st, we sent out a Google form. The link to the form, if you're not familiar with it, is in section 6, question 6 of our FAQ, our frequently asked questions, that's currently posted under the remote tab on our website. So you can still do that. So we've also been asked, well, what if my child gets sick? Typically in schools, we have a process for what we call homebound education, because during the course of a 180-day school year, children get sick. Sometimes it's a short period of time, sometimes it's a longer period of time. So we always have what we call a homebound process to get education to children at home. All that means this year is for our homebound students that are sick, and that could mean a 14-day quarantine for COVID, for example, that would qualify. They would be on a temporary remote option. So the only difference between the homebound and the remote option, if you're choosing to keep your child home, would be the homebound process is for a short-term illness for a student that is forced out of school and wants to come back. So that's temporary. Our remote option is going to be quarterly. In other words, if you choose remote option, you're going to choose the remote option, and you're going to stay in the remote option for at least one marking period. If you then choose, well, I can come back, then at the second quarter, for example, your child can come back. The reason for that is, to be very honest, this is a reinvention of school. So for us to divide the students into cohorts district-wide to make sure siblings are together, to come up with these different plans, to arrange for socially distanced classrooms to be not overcrowded, this is a monumental undertaking. So what we need is a little regularity in our scheduling. So we don't have the capacity for remote opting in and out throughout a quarter. So we do have it available. So I hope that answers some of the concerns regarding that. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see a little bit about the social distancing. So as we know it right now, that's 6 feet are required for in-person instruction. Our hybrid model gives us classrooms of anywhere between 9 to 12 students, sometimes a little more. It depends on the size of the classroom. Yes, we did consider other models. We've been asked about AM, PM, for example. So AM, PM would have half the school come in the morning, half the school come in the afternoon. If you consider the cleaning process that our custodial staff has to go through on a daily basis, that would mean they would have to clean the entire campus of every school in the middle of the day when they're already trying to do that while the kids are here. We heard about K-5 and 6-12 splits, for example. Elementary students, bringing them in full-time and having the middle school and high school kids stay home. Being on the middle school, high school end of the remote learning process, I don't think it was necessarily any easier for the high school and middle school children to be home learning than it was for the elementary school kids. They all have their own specific learning qualities. To us, that was not equitable. That would not be fair. Weekly splits, 1 week on, 1 week off, very stop and start and a little inefficient. So we're very confident with our hybrid plan. One of the things you might see in other communities is they're on for 2 days, off for 2 days, and then there's a 5th day for cleaning and remote things. That's 40% of the week in school. Our plan gives our students 50% of the week in school because we're on every other day. So let's talk about health and safety. This is certainly a cornerstone of this entire operation. Uh, we need to make sure that our students are safe in school, that our staff is healthy to be here to instruct. So this is obviously the foundation of the whole process. So in terms of screening to try to keep the building safe, you certainly saw the travel reminder sent out by Dr. Ferraro. You can't be a week before school starts. You can't be in a state that has a 14-day travel quarantine. So everybody should be back and ready to go by the time school starts. So that travel restriction reminder is important. Typically, your child wakes up with a sniffle and you look them in the face and you try to gauge, because you have to go to work, do I send my child to school or not? And sometimes we will send a sick child to school because we have things to do. We have to go out and earn money for our family. It is extremely important now that we remember how things have changed. Staff members, students that are ill should not be coming to school. So we're going to greatly rely on our parents to help out with that side of things. So the screening process for us involves, first of all, basically an online questionnaire. So you're going to get a web-based, very simple Department of Health questionnaire that says things like, have you had a high fever? Have you been exposed to anyone with COVID? Do you have any of these symptoms? And if the answer is yes, well, then you stay home. You submit that online, and then we get a spreadsheet. So if your child is sick and you've answered yes to any of those questions for your child, we will have it on the spreadsheet. If they have answered no to everything, what that does is that gets them to the door. So if the answer is no for all of those things, then we have, if you look in the upper right of the screen, you see a picture of our temporal scanner. And it's very very, very simple. It literally takes about 3 seconds to aim, point. It's no touch, and it gives us the temperature. So if the temperature is 100 degrees or greater, then the child cannot come in school. There's no health information. Dr. Farrar, you have a question?
Yes, Dr. Lutinsky, I'm getting some information that some parents are having difficulty logging in right now. So
Okay.
if we could just take a moment and see if we can correct the technical difficulties. Um, I know there are
Lori,
about 50 people who are already on, so let us see what we can do to help out here. If
the
you mind.
correct link is in the website that was in the email that was sent home from the board last week. If parents want to text friends who are trying to get on, and we're looking to correct the link on the website. If people go onto YouTube and go to Rhineck HSMS Live YouTube channel, you can get on it that way. And we're working to correct the link on the website as we speak. But it's also, the correct link is in the email sent home from the board last week.
I understand. Thank you, Mary. So let us see what we can
We
do.
always have
The correct link
authenticator,
is
that
in the
communicates.
email.
I am actually sending the correct link to their child's email account. That's the one I can readily access at the moment. So if they can have their child log into their Rhineck email, the correct link will be emailed to them in 1 second.
Okay, let us pause for a moment, Dr. Lutinsky. There's a lot of good
Sure.
information here, so I'd rather us have our families on. So let me repeat what Mrs. Lanzer offered. If you go to your email, if anyone can hear us, or we can text, if others are getting text, go to the email, please. And the email link is correct. The one posted on the website is incorrect. And can that be removed, please? We now have 82 viewers. Can we, I'll see if I can send out a blast. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so if anyone's listening at home and has access to the presentation, but perhaps has text contact with a friend who can't get in, the original link sent out in the board communication has the correct link. And Dr. Wilson, I believe, just sent the correct link to the student email accounts, if they have access to that.
Dr. Litinsky, perhaps you can pick up the presentation and let us go and answer questions. I think we are correcting the link, so it should be up and running shortly. But I want to remind the viewers, if anyone is texting you, please note that this presentation is being recorded and we are correcting the problem as we speak. So I'm sure in short order, we'll have everyone have the correct link. But again, the presentation is being recorded and will be posted. Dr. Litinsky?
So, Dr. Farber, would you like me to continue from where I left off, or I can go back and just highlight
Maybe just show the slide. I would ask that you go back to the beginning,
Okay.
show the slides, and then we do have time, a lot of time planned at the end of this to answer the questions that come in.
All right. So once again, so the email you should see probably in the upper left hand of your screen. Also, it's right here, so it's simply Q&A@rhinec.org. So if you have particular questions, you can send those to that email address, and we'll see them, and we'll do our best to get you specific answers. Right before the health slide, I had just been explaining about the requirements for the 3 plans and why we have our hybrid option. We had people asking why we chose to open the way we did, or why didn't we go full reopen? And the answer is very simple. We have to open with social distance and with 6 feet between students in classrooms, dining halls, hallways. The only way to get that done in our building is 50% capacity. There are some schools that have low enrollment and have extra space, and they can do different things with those things. But for our buildings, we can accommodate 50% capacity. So that's why we went with the hybrid option. And then the reason we chose the hybrid option that we did instead of an AM/PM, AM/PM brings all the kids in morning and afternoon. That greatly increases the load on the custodial staff. All elementary in and all secondary out, we believed is not equitable, not fair. And then the third thing was the remote option, and we've gotten questions about that. One of the questions that has been posed, and I just read one from one of our emails, is giving parents the information about the remote option will inform them as to what their choice will be. Or in other words, I need to be able to know what the plan is to know whether or not to choose it. So later on in the presentation, we are going to be talking more about remote learning and what some of those things will look like. But there is a Google form that was sent out on August 1st, about 2 weeks ago. If you're looking for the link is under the section 6, question 6 of the FAQ, the frequently asked questions list, that is currently under our reopening tab. Okay, so you may choose that. And that remote option is now available because our our rules have changed a little bit. That remote option is now available not just for medically vulnerable students, but for families that are just not comfortable with sending their child in. And the only caveat for that is what we need to be able to manage that is we need that to be a 1/4 commitment. In the elementary schools, it's going to be a trimester because they work a little bit differently. But for the secondary, middle school, and high school, that's going to be a quarterly basis. So hopefully we've had more families been able to join us. So I have been talking about slide number 4, which is the beginning of our health and safety. So the screening process. First of all, a lot of this is a community effort. So a lot of this revolves around, people following guidance and doing the right thing. And one of those is the travel restriction reminder. So the first day of school for students is September 8th. Because of our cohort system, for half it'll be the 9th, but September 8th is the first day of students. So no student should be in a state that is got a travel restriction that doesn't leave them enough time to get back for the start of school. So we rely on families for that. Any students that are sick should definitely stay home. Our staff will be following the same rules. There'll be a health screening questionnaire that families will complete. It's web-based. It's very simple. It's based on a Department of Health questionnaire. Questions like, do you have a temperature above 100? Have you been exposed to anyone with COVID? So on and so forth. So it's very simple. So you fill that out, and if all the answers are no, it feeds right into a spreadsheet for us. If all the answers are no, that gets your child to the door, where we will use the no-touch temporal scanner that you see in the little photograph in the upper right-hand corner. So the way that works is we have movable shields that a staff member would stand behind with a face shield and PPEs, personal protective equipment, and takes 2 to 3 seconds to scan. It's very quick. And if the child passes the screening questionnaire and the temperature check, then they come in the building. And then during the school day, one of the big things that we're going to be doing in the first few days of school, and obviously throughout, is training students and staff on identification of symptoms. And then they will certainly have easy access to the nurse's office in case anyone is feeling ill. So a little bit more about our illness protocols. So we have three district nurses, 1 per building. The nurses are going to assess anyone that comes to their office. So a staff member might see signs, other students might see signs, the student may self-report and go to the nurse. The nurse will assess the student, and if they need to, isolate them or simply call home. And they're going to call home anyway, but we have isolation rooms in each of our buildings that are adjacent to the nurse's office, and a process for getting that person out quickly. The student's sent home, and then the nurse would contact the Department of Health if the assessment warrants. So a run-of-the-mill little sickness, non-COVID, get a note, the student can return within 24 hours if there are no symptoms. For students that either have or potentially have COVID-19, then they can return after 10 days for having it or 14 days after potentially having it if they're fever-free, symptom-free, and they have a note. Then the contact tracing begins. So the contact tracing process is done by the Department of Health with our assistants. So obviously the medical experts are the ones that are going to actually do this and make the decision, but they don't know who the child had contact with. So our role in the middle school, high school, would be to help the Department of Health in determining who the child had contact with. Now, in the elementary buildings, it's a lot easier because the kids stay together in smaller groups. In the middle school, high school, the French class is not the advanced math class, which is not the science class, which is not the theater class. There's no possible way to keep students at the middle school, high school level together in one group. We're going to do our best to limit, but that's where the contact tracing comes in. So based on the results of the contact tracing, the Department of Health will then tell us what we need to do. And they have always had a process for these kinds of things, which we have used for whooping cough, lice, or anything else like that. Cleaning and disinfecting will occur. Again, our custodians can be very busy. So whatever spaces have to be closed down or cleaned will happen. And in the extreme, we've been asked about, well, what will it take for us to close? Well, that could come from an order by the governor. It could come from a recommendation from the Department of Health. So that's really dependent on specific scenarios. So more photographs. I want to thank Dr. Wilson for getting these decals up. So in the upper right-hand corner, for example, you see that's the middle school, high school office. So you see the face masks required sign on the left, the social distancing sign on the right. Please stand here on the floor. So we'll have a lot of signage and training that's going to help students with social distancing, why they have to wear masks, personal hygiene with regards to coughing and sneezing and things like that.
Eric, sorry to interrupt, but the link on the website has been fixed. So if families are still trying to get on, if they click on the link under the news and announcements, they will see the correct link for the YouTube video right now.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Lanza. So if anyone missed any part of the opening, this will be recorded, so you will still have the opportunity to see it. So again, face masks are going to be required for students, all students in the building, in class, as well as staff members. Our staff members also have face shields available, desk shields available. We have cleansed the building of decorations or anything that would make it more difficult for custodians to clean. So teachers' desks are uncluttered. Our hallways are going to be a lot more bare. So it's not necessarily pretty, but it's a medically effective environment, and it'll be easy for our students, our custodians to clean. That's going to be critical.
Okay, so good morning. We have some more photos here. Previously, we had an inquiry about whether or not we could share an example of one of the socially distanced classrooms. So if you look at the photo on the upper left, you'll notice that that is a sample of one of the high school classrooms that has been arranged with 6 feet of distance in between the desks. We are fortunate that our floor tiles are actually 1 foot. So we can count out very easily 6 feet of distance between desks. To the right of that photo, you'll notice that that is the dining hall. And you notice that those wheelie chairs have been moved into there so that students are sitting individually with 6 feet of distance facing one direction as they eat. And we'll go into what lunch will look like a little bit later in greater detail. We've also visited our restrooms, and you'll notice that there's a sign at the exit reminding students, Panthers, did you wash your hands? And reminding them of the importance of washing their hands during this pandemic. At one of the entrances, there's a little space there, and in that nook, we've designated the area for the student to wait to use the facilities. We've also put a please stand here for the sink that is to be utilized. And we are restricting the number of students that can be in the bathroom at one time. And we will have staff on hand to assist with that. Next slide, please. Okay, and previously we had also mentioned that we had zip tied the lockers in the hallways to eliminate an additional contact point. So you'll see that photo on the left. And that allows us to really take advantage of the space in the halls so that on the main level, we can have traffic flowing in two directions with 6 feet of distance. And unfortunately, the stairwells are narrow. So if you look at the photo on the right, there's additional signage indicating that that corridor, that stairwell happens to be designated for down traffic only, and that happens to be on the C corridor side of the building. And on the other side, in A corridor, that traffic will flow up, and then upstairs in the L wing where the language classes are, the pathway is narrow, and so traffic will flow in one direction up there as well. So we had also some inquiries about outdoor spaces previously, and some of the routes that students can take are very different. If you notice the yellow star at the top of that Google map, that happens to correspond with the E corridor exit in the high school. So let's just suppose for a second that a student had a class either with Miss Hanson or Miss Scalise at the very end of E corridor, and their next class happens to be somewhere near the pack. They would simply exit and then move out to the right and proceed down that path in a clockwise direction, and then enter back near the main entrance of the high school so that they can easily take a mask break, be outside, and not have to worry about having contact in the hallways. And that will reduce traffic in the hallways when weather permits. The photo on the left is right outside the main entrance of the middle school, high school. And so in the event of inclement weather, that is a place that students can go to take a quick mask break right under the eaves, and they will not get wet. Teachers are also, they've been encouraged to take advantage of classes outdoors. And the other day we had a short meeting with some of the RNTA, the teachers, and basically I walked outside with my Chromebook, and they were able to get reception and not lose reception outside, which was is an asset for teachers who would like to move their classes outdoors. We also previously had some question about tents, and if you listened to Wednesday's meeting, there were lots of restrictions that were placed on tents and making them really not feasible. Dr. Litinsky, would you like to describe?
Yeah, that's basically the department is their responsibility is to make rules that make sure everyone is safe. So sometimes we have rules for things and we scratch our head and we say, well, why can't we just do this or do that? At the root of it all is student safety. So yes, we're certainly going to be making maximum use of our outdoor space. The tents, they're expensive, and sometimes we will stretch and pay for something that might be expensive if it's effective. But one tent, might cost almost $20,000, and that'll give us space for 12 students. Our campus has 900 students on a full day, or 450 on a hybrid day. So at 20 grand for 12 students, monetarily, that's really not the best thing for us. And they have to be anchored. They have to be. It's basically, if you were to design and build a room outdoors, it's almost the same degree of restriction. So we did look at the tents, and on the outside, I think it's a good suggestion. It's just not practical. And one other thing on this, and I thank Dr. Wilson for getting this map. COVID or no, we were going to have our capital project underway at this time. So we've been asked about, well, how will the students move around with the construction going on? So we had the construction in mind. We've had the construction in mind for quite a while. The map that you see on there, the post road is off the bottom of the map. The gym, the road to the gym, the little bridge, that's off the top of the map. So most of what you see on here, most of it, is not affected by construction. The upper left-hand side of the map between the star on the upper right. And if you go diagonally down to the left, where it says Hornage Road there, that's where the steam wing is. So we have routes to and from the gym for the children anyway. And those are the routes that they'll use for recess or going to the gym. So we have that mapped out anyway. So the capital project construction will not have a big negative impact. The biggest negative impact would be that little courtyard area between the high school e-corridor and the dining hall, that nice grassy area. That's eventually going to be a courtyard. That's a construction area. So we do lose that. But 57 acres is a nice space for us to use. So we'll have plenty of space available outside. All right, you might possibly be witnessing the first time we're presenting a photograph of a toilet at a public meeting. So facilities and cleaning, our custodial crew has done a lot of heavy lifting, literally and figuratively, since the spring, and they've been working throughout. Problems great and small. I'll say small if you take a look at the bottom left photograph, that little fixture, that is a photograph from the 6th grade wing boys bathroom. There's another one of a different model in the girls bathroom on the other side. We got some no-touch foot door openers, and they tested a few out. So for the student bathrooms, you can get into the bathroom just by pushing the door open with your foot. But to get out of the bathroom, rather than have to have your hands washed and you're ready to go and then grasp a door handle, this foot handle lets you get out. So simple little things like that we've looked at, and our custodial staff has been great in testing things out. The upper right photograph, you see the red cap. It looks like almost like a red plastic cup. That's over the spout. So you can't lean down and drink out of the water fountain as you normally would. However, that's also a bottle filling station. So the bottle filler function does still work. And the toilets, any mass setting with a public toilet with multiple stalls are designed for easy cleaning. So we never had the seat covers on top. So the new thing that you see there is the seat cover. Obviously, they've all had seats, but they've been open for easy cleaning. So now we have seat covers so that you shut the cover, flush the toilet, and there's no aerosolized plume of water coming out of the toilet bowl. So they're just some photograph examples of some of the new things in the building. In terms of ventilation, we've been asked a lot about that. There's pluses and minuses of a room with AC and a room with windows. So we have a very small number of rooms, usually tiny offices that don't have air conditioning or don't have a window. They're not going to be used for student use. So all of our students will be in a ventilated room having either AC or windows or both. Our AC system is rated for what they call MERV 11 filters. Those filters are going to be changed more regularly than normal. The AC system will be on daytime mode 24 hours a day. And what that means is for energy savings, normally when everyone leaves the building, a lot of things shut down. Lights go off, computers go off, the ventilation system goes into nighttime mode. However, we're going to have the ventilation system on 24-hour mode. So there'll be a constant movement of air. And our system, it doesn't just recirculate air, it brings air from the outside. And then obviously our windows. The windows are going to be open all the time. And as we said, teachers will be able to bring their students out whenever they can. One last thing on the bottom, if you watched the presentation we gave on, I think it was July 23rd, we talked about electrostatic sprayers, and all that is a more efficient, it's a quicker way of getting disinfectant onto a surface. So instead of a custodian using a hand spray bottle and then wiping, this is a machine that charges the disinfectant particles so that when they're sprayed out, it covers a wider area, and it clings to the surface. And it's also a lot faster for the custodians. So when we've been asked about how often will the interior of the buildings be cleaned, this will allow them to be cleaned more frequently. All right, lunch and recess. Start in terms of breakfast. So we serve breakfast every day because we have a very nice dining hall here. It will be open and available for free and reduced price lunch students. We are going to show you a schedule in which typically our kids would be able to come in early, hang out with friends, hang out afterwards after school. We cannot do that right now, but we also have an obligation to provide meals for students. So we will be able to do that in the morning. And as far as lunch goes, this is what we call a grab and go option. So it's not a buffet where they're going to pick and choose things. They're going to literally come up, have a touchless payment option where they don't have to use their finger to type in a number, grab a pre-prepared meal, and then go sit down. Or they can certainly bring lunch from home. Now, in terms of the actual dining hall, we showed you a picture of the middle school, high school dining hall. What we've done is we've taken what we call our rolling chairs. Our rolling chairs were the choice for the dining hall for three reasons really. One, in the classrooms, it's much easier to keep a stationary desk in a socially distanced position. So we moved them to the dining hall, and they have little flat items on the bottom of the wheels to prevent them from rolling around. But when the custodians want to, they can move those chairs a lot more easily than tables or desks. So the rolling chairs in the dining hall permits better cleaning. They also have, they're all plastic, easily cleaned, and they all have drink holders. So they're well suited for that. We were asked during the board meeting if we were going to have assigned seats for students in the cafeteria, and we are considering it. Our original thought was no, because if you think about what our students are about to go through, think about what they went through in the spring. Now they get to come back, but they're going to be in tight groups, marching in unison, not seeing a lot of their friends. For a lot of our students, the highlight of their day is the lunch period. So we are going to be trying to get kids social opportunities whenever we can. That's very important to kids at this age. So originally, that was going to be a place where we weren't going to require a regimented seating arrangement. However, there are good reasons to, and contact tracing is significant. Contact tracing is important because if someone does become ill, we need to know who they were in contact with. So we're seriously considering, the idea of prescribed seating arrangements in the dining hall. But we also have outdoor spaces, weather permitting. Dr. Wilson, you want to talk a little bit about the high school?
Sure. So with the socially distanced dining hall, there is a limit on the number of students that we can actually fit in there. And since that is actually one of the shared spaces, and to assist with contact tracing, we decided to basically separate the location where the high school students and the middle school students would be eating. So typically 11th and 12th graders are permitted to leave campus to go out for lunch. So we're going to encourage them to do that. All students in the high school will be permitted to eat outdoors if space is available and weather permitting. And of course, if it happens to be raining, but it's a nice temperature, they can go sit under the eaves outside the front entrance. The PTSA was gracious enough to, in their yearly gifts, we had requested 2 additional picnic tables, and those will be placed outside the main entrance of the high school as well to accommodate additional students who might want to sit outside. The rest of the students, 9th and 10th grade, who are in school that day, if they don't want to go outside, they can utilize the library. And the library will be designated solely for the use of high school students during lunch periods.
And we've been asked about masks at recess. So our mask breaks will take place outside. So the answer to the question, will they have to wear masks at recess, really depends on what they're doing and where they are. We're not going to be having contact, basketball games or anything where students are going to be, touching the same ball frequently or packed tightly together. So they are going to be spread out. Imagine a loose group of friends, 6 feet distance at least, walking around the track on the football field. If you've got 20 minutes in the middle of the day, that's an easy way to spend with your friends. If they're spaced far enough, the rules allow them to not have their mask on. So that's a mask break. So it really depends. So the answer to the masks at recess is we're not going to require it unless they can't be appropriately social distance. Dr. Wilson, I think you are muted.
You are correct. Sorry, my apologies. So we recognize that the reopening documents are quite dense and some of the presentations are rather long. So pardon us as we kind of review some of the information for those who were unable to either read the information or access the videos previously. So in order to understand the next few slides, it's really important that we go over what synchronous and asynchronous learning is. Synchronous means that students are learning the same material in the same place at the same time with their teacher. So examples would be, you'll hear me use the word live classes, virtual instruction via Google Meets, or in-person instruction. And those are all examples of synchronous learning. You will also hear me use the word asynchronous learning, and that means basically they're working on the same material, but they do not necessarily have to do it in the same place or at the same time. So the example would be when they were home last March and they got a pre-recorded lesson video to reinforce or pre-teach a topic. The student had the latitude to either look at the material and complete the activities in the morning, or if they happened to be helping their parents with childcare as the parents were working, they had the ability to work on that material later on in the afternoon. And as long as they got the work in, everything was okay. Additionally, for asynchronous learning, because of the fact that we want to and will cover the entire curriculum, it will require teachers to kind of do a little adaptations and basically assign some of the work where they're being asked to apply the content or the skill at home. I gave some examples the other day. It might be they watch a teacher demo of the lab and then they do the graphing and the analyses questions at home. It could be, participating in Miss Lanza's class in a Socratic seminar and then going home and writing the essay about the argumentative essay. It could be, looking at learning the content for the Civil War and then going home and looking at documents and writing a document-based essay. It could be additional practice problems. Teachers may assign homework. You notice that they adjusted last year, and this was a question, some of their grading policies to account for the work that was being done at home. So I think homework will be an individual decision. We will have deeper conversations with the teachers when they return to the buildings at the end of August. But you will see how they are assigning and giving credit for homework reflected in their syllabi that they hand out at the beginning of the school year. We also had some questions about technology. So the next slide, Mrs. Lanza is going to speak to you about some of the technology.
So you may have heard already, we are excited to announce that we are starting a new one-to-one Chromebook program for our students in grades 3 through 12. So what that means is that every student in grades 3 through 12 will be issued a district owned device to use throughout the school day, at home, over the summer. It is theirs to use for the duration of their time at Rhinebeck. So we're excited to start this program. Devices will be distributed on their first day in school, whether that is September 8th or 9th, depending on your child's schedule. On Monday, you will receive an email with our technology agreement, and in there is the one-to-one handbook. There's a lot of information in there about when you get your device, when it needs to be returned if you withdraw from the school, cleaning the device, caring for the device, when to use it, what you should do if you have problems, questions or concerns, things that you are and are not allowed to do with the device. So that's really important to review that yourself and with your students so that everybody's aware of, what's expected. Also in there are links to Chromebook FAQs that can be found in that document as well as on the technology webpage. So, and then there's also a help desk form. So if you're having issues, your child's having issues with their device, they can submit a form and it will go to our EduTech team and they will get back to you about contacting you to schedule a time to bring in the device. So we're very excited about that. We know a lot of you have purchased personal devices for your students and maybe wondering if they can use those instead. However, because of some of the guidelines in the state reopening and CDC reopening, we ask that you use the Rhinex device in Rhinex schools. If you would like to use your personal device at home, you're welcome to. We prefer, though, in the building, you're on your Rhinex device. Just for germs, it's a high touch object, so we really just only want students on that device and not bringing personal devices into the building. So teachers may use a variety of technologies to connect with their students, whether they are in person or at home. So some of the district approved technologies that we've purchased licenses for, aside from Google Classroom, which is included in our Google reference district, that's where a lot of teachers are going to post lessons for the day, post announcements for their students. So it's very important that your children check their Google Classroom a few times a day. They can even set up to get announcements to their emails when teachers post new announcements or when they post new work or any material. So having your students check their Rhinex email and their Rhinex Classroom multiple times a day is incredibly important. In addition to that, we have Annotate, which is our new whiteboard program. Some middle school, high school teachers have been using it for a few years. We're now going to push it out across the district. And what works nicely with that is it's web-based. So the teacher's whiteboard can be followed wherever the students might be. Those teachers will be able to project their notes out so students can follow along if they are home. The notes can also be published to Google Classroom for students to refer back to and reflect on their own. Screencastify is the recording program that we use to record our screens. So when we heard about that asynchronous instruction, those recorded videos, that might be done through Screencastify. Gives teachers the option to record their screens, do voiceover lessons, put a webcam on themselves, and teach a specific skill or a lesson they might want to put out to their students. Cami is a document reader and writer, so a lot of worksheets can be done on that. It does link through Google Classroom. So instead of, we know a lot of you were trying to submit work and worksheets back to your teachers last year and were taking pictures and emailing them in. And we know that was incredibly cumbersome for you and for our teachers as well. So Cami is a way for them to put worksheets up if they want to, math problems, anything that they want written on, any PDFs or other documents. Students can then write on that on their touchscreen computers from their one-to-one initiative. We are also going to get students will be able to get a stylus as well. So they can write on that and then just submit it right back through Google Classroom. So we'll cut back on printing. We know that there was a lot of printing going on and parents expressed concerns. So this will cut back on our teachers printing as well as our families having to print. And then Padlet and Edpuzzle are just instructional tools that teachers and students can use to collaborate. A lot of students are used to Padlet. It's a graphic organizer. It's a fun collaborative wall. It's got a lot of different features that students can work on group projects and present visually to their teachers. And same with Edpuzzle is another way for teachers to post material to students through videos and ask questions to gauge understanding. So we're trying to give our teachers and our students as many tools as possible to keep that connection, to keep students engaged, to gain feedback, so that the curriculum might, while we're still moving through the curriculum as we can, their approach to it might be a little bit different through using these tools, but they're all available for their teachers, for their students and teachers. There's another list also on our district webpage That is our district approved technologies. You can find that on the technology webpage. Those are all websites that have been vetted for data compliance that we have allowed our teachers to use. So while these are ones that we've recently purchased or renewed our purchase for, there are also ones listed on that webpage as well to show you some other programs that teachers might use.
We also had a question, oh, sorry, Dr. Latinsky, about whether or not homework would be individual assignments or whether or not they would be allowed to collaborate. So I think sometimes teachers assign graphic organizers to a group of students, and fortunately through the use of Google Classroom or some of they have the ability to be assigned and work within the same document to complete homework. So I just wanted to address that question.
I think it would be the teacher, right? The teacher would say this is a collaborative assignment. You know, the teachers would say that.
Yeah, so there is the opportunity, and that will depend on the lesson and what the teacher is trying to accomplish. Oh, sorry. Okay, so we're at bell schedules and arrival. So one of the questions that keep coming up is whether or not we are going to teach the entire curriculum. And the short answer to that is yes. Oftentimes our teachers delve deeper into topics because time permits. So there may be less of that, you know, but they will certainly teach the required curriculum. And that's why that teacher planning time has been embedded in the beginning of the day in the middle school and high school campus. Since they do not typically have common planning time, this will allow departments and teams within departments to work together to make sure that they are covering all of the content and making the appropriate modifications. So if you look, first period will start, it's just about 30 minutes later than it normally does. And the day will end about 3 minutes after it typically does at 2:48. And the periods are 38 minutes long. We've preserved the 3-minute passing, and the logic being that we will have half the number of students in the halls, and teachers will be flexible because by the first week, after the first week passes, teachers tend to get an idea of where students are coming from, and they will, you know, give them the latitude and understand that if they're coming from the athletic center, it might take them a little bit longer, or if they're in a specific classroom upstairs in the L wing and they have to walk around and go down and come back around to a corridor, they will know that it will take a few extra minutes. So they might assign, you know, a longer do now assignment so that kids are not missing out on instruction. We've also designated separate entrances for each grade. For the high school, we have the 2 entrances at the main entrance, C corridor and the senior lounge, and those are the entrances that we will be utilizing. We will, you know, assign grades to those as the reopening approaches. The middle school has the same. 2 sides of A corridor have an entrance as well as B corridor. And Dr. Latinsky.
Yeah. So one of the things we've been asked about is, you know, there are certain timing choke points of a day where we get crowding. Beginnings of days, ends of days. So keep in mind that under the hybrid plan, we're only going to have 50% of the kids on campus. So number one, there's half the kids not here. Subtract a few for students that might be working from home on a remote option. So number one, we don't have the number of students on campus that we will normally. The separate entrances are also going to greatly reduce the number of students coming into each building. So if you're familiar with my end of the building, for example, my office is right next to the what we call the main middle school entrance. So that'll be the entrance for 1 grade. So that's half of 1 grade. The other grade will be coming in on the other side of the building, and my 3rd grade will be coming in at the end of B corridor. So we will be spread out. One of the questions we were asked is about inclement weather. Okay, so here's where one of those commercials where you sound like your father. When I was a kid, I walked 1.1 miles from second grade on to and from school. And if it was raining, I wore a raincoat. And no, this is true, or an umbrella. So our kids, if you've ever driven into school before school starts to drop your child off on a rainy day, and you look at the kids that are walking in, the raincoat industry must be dead, because I don't see any raincoats and I don't see umbrellas, and yet they walk in the weather like it's no problem. I don't think I could do that. So first of all, we do not have the interior space to line kids up inside. We have to go medical health first. If they are going to be waiting outside, if it is inclement weather, you may choose, if you drive your child to school, you keep them in the car for a little longer. We know we have more traffic in here on a rainy day. We know that's a fact. Okay, but again, half the number of kids on campus. But in all seriousness, have them be prepared for inclement weather. That's where we are right now with that. So the entry process is going to be staggered in terms of where kids will come in, and there'll be assistance in having them spaced out as they line up. On the way out, we're also going to be using different exits and also staggered dismissal time. So right now, my sixth grade normally gets out 5 minutes before my other two grades. So we're going to spread that out a little more. So if you look at that period 9, which is now 2:10 to 2:48, ninth period is the flex period for my sixth graders. So they're going to be getting out first. So we will publish exactly when that will be, so parents will be able to arrange their pickups. But my sixth grade will be getting out first. That'll let them walk out spaced, get the cars out, and then toward the end of the period, seventh grade will get out a little bit earlier, get them out, and then eighth grade at 2:48 at the end of the day, and keep everything spaced out. Dr. Wilson, did you mention the library at all?
So the library will be closed before, during, and after school. And if you look at the bell schedule, period 4 is now also a lunch period. So period 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, the library is being utilized for high school lunch. And then periods 1, 2, 3, and period 9, it may be utilized as a learning space. So unfortunately, while library services will be available, the physical location will be closed to students, other than, the for lunch and things that we've mentioned. Also, we used to have students come to school first period, even if they didn't have a class. If you were a 9th through 11th grader, you had a study hall and you had a location where you needed to be. This year, we are going to change that slightly. If you do not have a first period class, you do not need to report until period 2. If you happen to be lucky enough not to have a first and a second period class, then you would just simply need to arrive by homeroom. And at the end of the day, the same thing holds true. We want to make sure that you're not here if you do not need to be. So if you do not have a period 9 class, then you will be leaving at 2:07. If you happen to be somebody who, instead of period 1 and 2, you don't have a period 8 and 9, then you have the ability to leave at 1:26. So that's this simple way to explain it. Okay, so the hybrid model looks confusing, but basically, based on your cohort assignment, that we have 2 cohorts, 1 and 2. We've used the Rhineck colors to designate the cohort days of instruction. So if you look at the calendar, you'll notice there's lots of blue and there's lots of black. So the blue days for cohort 1 happen to be Monday and Wednesday. And for cohort 2, they happen to be the black days, which are Tuesday and Thursday. Friday, some schools, you're going to notice they only have the kids coming into the building physically 2 days a week for each cohort. We wanted to take advantage of that last day So for us, that happens to be a Friday. And rather than keeping them home virtually, we thought it was another opportunity to bring students in for in-person instruction. So on full weeks, such as September 14th and September 21st, you're going to notice that the Fridays alternate between cohort 1 and cohort 2. And that pattern will continue as you move through all of the full weeks. On the shortened weeks, you're going to notice that the group that missed instruction is assigned the Friday. So for the week of Labor Day, cohort 1 misses the Monday, so they come in on the Friday. The same thing happens on the week of Yom Kippur. Again, it's a cohort 1 week. On Columbus Day, again, that Friday is a cohort 1 day. On the superintendent conference day, which is that red box on November 3rd, that happens to be a cohort 2 week on the Friday. And Veterans Day is a Wednesday, so that cohort 1 comes in. So when students are in school, they will meet with their teacher. They will go to all of their classes, inclusive of their elective classes. So all of their core and elective classes will be meeting in groups of cohorts under the hybrid schedule. When they are not in school, they will be working on those asynchronous activities that we mentioned earlier in the table. So they might have a screencastify video that's been uploaded to Edpuzzle with a number of check-in questions that teachers can use if they want to use a flipped model of instruction so that they can save some time. And that would be a topic that historically kids have had an easier time understanding. So if you are a parent of an 8th or 9th grade student who happen to take living environment, ecology and food webs tend to be something that's easier that they might be able to teach through a pre-teach video. However, they understand that DNA transcription and translation is difficult. So they would use the in-person time to instruct students on that material. Key points here is we've preserved specials in the middle school and elementary schools, as well as electives in the high school. We did not want to offer just the core classes. We felt that was a disservice to the students and taking away things that they're passionate about, and we did not want to do that to students. This alternating allows for consistent and regular in-person contact with their teacher so that there is greater continuity of instruction. As Dr. Latinsky mentioned earlier, we didn't want kids to go long periods of time without having the follow-up with their teacher, and that's why we felt this was the best option for us currently. Let's see, there was a question here. It'll come back to me. Maintaining instructional time. I got that one. I believe I answered.
Group work on home days.
Group work on home days. So they can participate in group work if the teacher decides to assign it using one of the collaborative tools that we mentioned earlier. There might be individual practice. I can see a math teacher assigning additional practice problems if they're using a portion of the asynchronous at-home time for reteaching and reinforcing as opposed to pre-teaching.
Can I mention something as well? I believe that we have opened up Google Meet to allow middle school and high school students only to initiate Google Meets when they are doing group instruction. Remember that they are on their RINEC account, which means that they need to follow the acceptable use policy and the code of conduct, but group work can be done via a Google Meet that the students can initiate themselves as well.
Okay, so if you go to the next slide, actually, no, that's good. Okay, so the next slide, we have the remote model, and we're still trying to finalize the details, but we have enough information so that there is some confusion. People are wondering, the letter days repeat and how does this carry over into the remote model? And the reason that we are preserving the repeating letter days and we're going to utilize the same calendar for remote is in the event that we have intermittent closures, we don't have to scramble each time to create a new calendar in response to a closure. So basically, under remote model, we heard the feedback from all of the surveys and the parent emails, and we understand that we want something a bit more consistent and regular. So departments will conduct those live synchronous classes basically every other day on their assigned day.
Dr. Farrar, you had a comment?
Yes.
Microphone, Dr. Farrar.
I just want a point of clarification, Dr. Wilson. As you're speaking about the remote model, you're talking about a full remote model district-wide?
This is if if the building closes
Correct.
or if the whole district closes, not
Okay.
the family option to keep their child home, but
Right.
rather the whole school building or the whole district is on a remote stay-at-home model.
Thank you. That's important because I know that we get confused with the different models. So thank you for clarifying that.
Okay. And basically, daily, students would have half of their day, half of their classes be asynchronous, while the other half are live and synchronous. So here's an example. This isn't the schedule that we've set, but this will help you understand. So full credit classes meet every day. So it doesn't matter if they have 2 A days in a row, 2 B days, 2 C days, if the kids are all working from home. So the entire class would be assigned a live instruction for a certain set of subjects. So for example, if on the first letter A day, let's say that the week of September, that 14th, that Monday, is a cohort B, is a B day for cohort 1. So if it happens that they would have English, science, world language having live classes, and then social studies, math, full year art electives would have asynchronous activities. And the opposite would be true on the second letter day, which is the 15th. So they would flip on the second day. And what we're thinking right now is that the half credit classes that meet every other day, they run on an ACE or a BDF schedule. And since there are 2 consecutive letter days, so let's say Tina's in a class that meets BDF days. So on the first B day, I might have theater live over Google Meets with Mr. Harris. And then the second day, he might have something assigned for me to work on and practice at home. I might be reading the script and getting ready for the skit that we're going to do the next time we meet on the D day live, which happens to be the 18th. Okay, can we go back to the main screen? Okay, so that will allow us to utilize the same calendar regardless of whether we are in a hybrid or remote scenario. And again, we felt that was very, very important so that in the event that the DOH tells us that we need to close for a week, we have the ability to move on. We don't have to stop, create a new calendar, and then adjust. And these calendars will be available quarterly, and we'll make any adjustments that are needed based on missed days of instruction, like due to a snow closure.
Another thing that these calendars allow us to do is preserve the whole schedule for all students, and by that I mean non-core classes as well. We've been asked about things like academic intervention services, AIS, other specials like physical education, art, music. So these 2 calendars, whether hybrid or remote, using that bell schedule. So both of these will use that bell schedule that we discussed for synchronous learning. This will allow students to get AIS instruction, arts instruction, and those things won't be missed. Dr. Wilson, you think your mic is not on?
We have a question about, I think
On
we
that.
answered that one. Yeah. Okay.
We're good?
Yep. I think we can move to the next slide.
All right. So one of the things we've been asked about is the degree of curriculum covered, considering the fact that we're in a hybrid. So if the kids are only in half the time, does that mean only half of the material will be covered? So the answer is no. So if you look at the top, in a normal year, a student will typically get one period of instruction per day in a core course. So let's take a core course. You get one period of instruction per day. In that period, what the teacher is not doing, the teacher is not standing in front of the class in a fixed spot, talking and giving direct instruction for 42 minutes. And the kids are just listening and answering a question here and there. What they're doing is they're giving a mix of that direct instruction, which is frequently a minority of the period. And then during the period, the kids are working on independent work, group activities, large or small. They may be doing assessments. They might watch a video. They may be interpreting political cartoons, all sorts of different things. So the full period that they're getting in here every day under normal circumstances is not necessarily the old-fashioned vision of kids lined up in rows and a teacher direct instructing. So fast forward to our hybrid plan, the kids are still getting one period per day in that course. The amount of time has not changed. So if fourth period is math class, under normal circumstances every day, fourth period will still be math class during the hybrid. So instead of the direct instruction taking let's say a portion of the beginning of a normal period 2 days in a row, now while we have the kids in under the hybrid model, they'll be doing more of the direct instruction on the in-person day, and on the day that they're out, they'll do those other activities. Same coverage, same amount of time, only it's over a 2-day time span rather than 2 consecutive 1-day time spans. So whether it's an AP course or anything else, we will cover it. Obviously, we're in different circumstances right now. So the last bullet you see there, for example, in a math class, instead of doing 3 practice problems after a concept, maybe the teacher will do 2. Okay, we are going to make some decisions based on efficiency, but everything will be covered.
And using a flipped classroom model as an example, I believe it was Board President Rubin who mentioned photosynthesis the other day. So if the teacher teaches in person the process of photosynthesis, the inverse reaction would be cellular respiration. So they might send the students home with the video for the asynchronous at-home learning day, and the students would be looking at the same reaction, just kind of backwards, to make it easier for them to understand. So that might be a decision that they make as a living environment team, for example. Math teachers, for example, they teach kids how to graphically solve an algebraic equation one day. So if they know how to graph one problem, one linear equation, they might send them home with a problem or a lesson that asks them to graph 2 equations on the same graph. So since they can do one, they should be able to do 2. And then, explain to them in a Screencastify video that where the 2 lines intersect is actually the solution set. So those are some real examples of how teachers might rearrange things to make certain that they cover all of the material.
Okay. I think right now I want to address one question that's come up with regards to live streaming, or what some people are calling live virtual remote learning from the school to the home? And why can't that be done on a regular basis? All right, a couple of things about that. First of all, in education, and certainly here, the classroom is an environment in which every student has an expectation of privacy, first of all. So broadcasting a child's in-class performance out to homes is really not something we're interested in doing. Number one. Number two, if you think about what we went through last spring, we're all itching to get back in here. And no, it's not going to be like it normally is. But me, I'm excited when I see somebody walk up to the front of the building or go to the bike rack, because like I don't see people anymore. Our kids are starved for interaction. We need them together. At the beginning of the year, our teachers need to meet their children. We've been asked about, well, how will, it's more of an elementary question, but how will the teachers or the students meet their teacher? Yeah, that in-person contact is a big deal. So we definitely need that. So we want them to be in here as much as possible. So as a teacher, when I get my kids in a classroom, even though I'm only getting 10 out of 20 kids on this day, and I have the other 10 out of 20 in person the next day, the last thing that I want to be doing is standing on one of those little decals at the front of my class with a camera on and not being able to move and doing exactly what I would be doing if everyone were home. Because that's really not the way we educate. That's a lesser variant of what we do. Our teachers need to be able to have interactive contact with their classes. That's why we're bringing them in, because that's a superior method of education. So for a teacher instructionally to have that interactive experience with the kids in class while simultaneously having to manage an on-screen class is not really practical in a classroom setting. I gave the example the other night at the board meeting about, if you think about what a teacher is going to have to do in a 38-minute span, in the 3 minutes between classes, there's furniture management, there's getting the kids in the classroom, making sure that everybody's masked, making sure the windows are open. They cannot be worried about technology sign-ons. Once the class starts, we're now on a 38-minute clock. And as Dr. Wilson said, we're going to be a little bit open and freer with our start of class time rules, because we need to get everybody in at a socially distanced pace with mask breaks. So it's not bell rings, lock the door anymore. So now we're on a 38-minute clock. For a teacher to be managing the remote environment, which is a whole new task unto itself, that's a whole different skill set and process, while simultaneously teaching in front of a class, that does not work. So privacy and educational efficacy, we're not going to be what we call live streaming in class. However, if you think back to the slide that Mrs. Lanza explained, what we will be able to do is what we call different forms of live instruction. So whereas it's not going to be 38 minutes of teacher on camera talking to children, there will be opportunities during the classroom to use that technology and to use the teacher's voice live to project things that the teacher's doing in real time, to have the kids at home participate in aspects of the class. That will happen. Okay, so the big difference is live streaming all the time. Our goal is not to have a 38-minute span of time to occupy a child at home. That's not the goal. The goal is to teach them effectively. And to do that, we've created a good system. So there's a difference between live streaming and live instruction, and those technology tools and the training that Mrs. Lanza is going to be able to provide for our staff at the beginning of the year before the kids come in, that's going to be critical. We've been asked different questions about special education. So I'll just throw this out. If you have any specific questions about your child's IEP or any kind of specific accommodations, definitely contact the special education department. Okay, so they'll be able to work with you and get you specific answers. But we do know that some of our students are have greater educational needs. So some of our what we call special class students that might not be integrated into a regular general education class. Those special education students will have the opportunity to come in every day. Other forms of special education services will be provided on a different means. Okay, so there's a lot of different varieties of that. So again, if you have specific questions, I do encourage you to please reach out to our special education department. They'll help you out with that. And same thing with our English language learners. We have our ENL staff will be testing our students as usual as they come in to ascertain which specific level of language proficiency they have, so that they get the right amount of what we call push in and pull out services in those areas. But again, contact the specialist, because those tend to be very case by case specific kind of questions.
So currently all extracurricular activities and sports have been suspended. The start of the varsity JV fall sports season has been postponed by the New York State Public High School Athletic Association until September 21st. And in the event that can't happen, they do have some modified possibility, some schedule that they've proposed of bringing some of those sports on at a later time. We will have to wait and see what their decision is, though, about that September 21st date. In the meantime, they have stated that bona fide students who choose to be on a full remote option, meaning they are home, learning from home because their families filled out that Google form, they will be permitted to participate in athletics should they be offered. We've been receiving some questions about clubs. We're going to hold off. They typically don't start until October anyway, so we will reevaluate what's going on once school opens and have some more information for you sometime in September.
We've also been asked about music,
Yes.
our music program. So in the guidance, it allows the mask wearing is required, and social distance is 6 feet. They are permitted to take their masks off while they're seated, all facing one direction in the dining hall. That's specifically stated in the guidance. It also specifically states that for certain aerobic activities in physical education or in music, such as singing or blowing a trumpet, that the social distance becomes 12 feet. So that gives us some opportunities as long as we have 12 feet. So with regards to middle school general music, well, that's a curricular part of the day, just as it is in K-5. So our music teachers will be providing music instruction if they have an opportunity. So no, I do not envision hordes of children going outside and singing loudly or blowing trumpets. If we can do that without rattling the neighborhood, I would give it a try, certainly. But if we can do it inside, we're gonna do percussion. We're gonna work on note reading and all those things that do not involve blowing a trumpet or singing. Certainly at the beginning of the year, we'll front load those things, and then perhaps if the situation changes, we can do it later in the year. At the middle school level, we're suspending our pull-out practice program to make sure that our students have maximum time in class. But what we do have is our period 1 music program. It's on a cohort model. So again, half the students. So that helps with the 12-foot distance. So our music staff is working on providing a program that will allow chorus, strings, and band instruments on a more limited basis. And again, that's time and space permitting.
We just also received, this is not about extracurriculars, but we received a question about where a child can go in the middle of the day, a high school student, if they have a free period and they're an upperclassman, basically a senior, and they cannot go outside due to weather conditions. If you recall, the library is closed, so if it's not a lunch period, that might be a space. We are also looking to possibly utilize the PAC as a space where we can put students with ample distancing to be supervised in the event that they need a place to be. For the younger students, it would be a moot point because they would have a study hall, so they would have a designated location.
All right, so at this point, we're done with what I would call a presentation. I'm sure Dr. Wilson was doing the same as she was speaking. I was looking through some of the emails. So I think now, we can perhaps try to get to some of those other questions that came up. I know there was one about college counseling.
Yes. So college counseling, college recommendations are typically done as a team because oftentimes different members of the counseling department have different relationships with students. One might be a club advisor or have been a coach, while the other counselor is their academic counselor. So they all provide input into creating their counselor recommendations. So no need to worry. We do have a new counselor joining us by the name of Mr. Miller, and you will be introduced to him shortly, and he is phenomenal. And so no need to worry about the college process. If the meetings need to take place virtually, that will be the case. We are limited to essential visits. So I just want everyone to be prepared at the high school level. There are a number of induction ceremonies that typically take place in September and October. National Honor Society, World Language National Honor Society, the Thespian Honor Society, and now the Math Honor Society. As of right now, based on the guidance, those will be virtual. Okay. Now, details will have to be hammered out at a later time. But for now, just anticipate that parents are going to be watching this virtually.
And Dr. Wilson, that's actually a great point to bring up right now. That details will be hammered out later. If you look at our reopening plan that we had to submit to the state back at the end of July, the very first thing it says at the top is that this is a living document that will be changed and updated as the guidance or our situation changes. So there are things that perhaps we've discussed today that the situation might change in a month. We'll be able to do something differently. I read these emails and sometimes I feel like I have to deliver bad news to people. So the last one that came in was about modified sports, for example. Right now, no modified sports, but we're in the business of providing things for children. So we're going to do what we can to provide things. So if we get the green light to provide athletic opportunities for our students, we will. But right now, no modified.
We also have a question about students going outside for mask breaks and utilizing outdoor routes. Will the doors in the buildings be unlocked all day? And that is an emphatic no. So each student's ID card, so if they need to get a new one, they will need to get a new one, will be set so that they can, basically, there's a little box in front of the door. If they wave their ID card in front of it, it will unlock the door and they will be able to gain entry, but those will be set to school hours.
Okay. A note on that. We spent a great deal of time the past 10 years refining the hardening of our school as a target and safety and security procedures. And this has thrown that off kilter a bit, because now we are looking for outdoor opportunities and open windows and touchless access to doors. So we've given this a great deal of thought. We do have procedures, for example, for automatically locking the building during a lockdown. That will still happen. So our doors will still be able to lock automatically in a lockdown situation. We also have existing procedures for outdoor classes. Our PE classes, weather permitting, they frequently take place outside. So this is not something new. So we have existing protocols for them to assist with those kinds of things. We've at the middle school, high school campus, because we needed to, we've added some external horns to increase the audio coverage outside, so that if there was an emergency, people outside would be able to hear, and we would be able to give direction.
I'd like to answer another question if it's
Yeah,
okay.
we're going through
Yeah,
the ones we didn't go over.
Yeah, so a parent is inquiring if they should wait around to see if their child was approved or denied to gain access when scanned. So prior to coming to school to drop off your child, you would be asked to fill out that health survey that's online. And one of the questions does ask if your child has a fever with a temperature over, I believe it's 100.4, correct, Dr. Latinsky?
It's now 100.
100. So, our hope would be that you would actually take their temperature at home before you answer that question. So, once you pass the scanner, then you'll have a certain color that shows up on the form, and you would have to show that at the door, or we would also have a list of students who successfully passed the scan. So, all that said, they should pass the temperature scan when they get to the front of the building. If they do not, we have a separate isolation area. This also came up in another question. It is a separate room inside the nurse's office. And if you've ever been inside the nurse's office, it has basically a restroom, another outer area, the area by her desk, an area inside, and then there's another inner office, and that has a separate door, and that is the location that we would be using for the isolation area. So students who are healthy would not be interacting with students who are potentially symptomatic. If you fail the temporal scan, you would be brought in to that area, and your parent would be contacted if they left already to have somebody pick you up, basically.
I had a question about the concept of streaming a lesson if all the students are remote. If all the students are remote, then things are a little bit different, because then we're not talking about broadcasting students around. So yeah, that would be a little bit different. So a teacher, for example, would be able to live stream themselves, like a physical education teacher, for example, would be able to live stream themselves performing an exercise and demonstrating an exercise, or leading, if you turn on a cable exercise show and the person at the front's, leading an exercise. Yes, they could do those kinds of things. Absolutely.
Muted, Tina.
Or, I'm sorry, Dr. Farrar, you had a question?
No, I forgot to unmute. We have a
Oh.
question about classrooms without windows. So some of the smaller interior classrooms, I think they're mentioning, basically, some of them are hooked up to the ventilation. So if they're hooked up to the AC, they can be utilized, but the number of people permitted in that space would depend on the square footage. So I can't think of a classroom that has no AC and no window. So
There wouldn't be one.
yeah.
So we wouldn't have any student space. We have very few spaces like that anyway.
Mhm.
Sometimes small offices, but those wouldn't be used for student use.
Yeah. We have a question about some of the smaller rooms. If it cannot, we're basically assigning rooms based on square footage, and we've calculated the maximum capacity for each learning space. So just know that, we've counted out the 6 feet. We know how many desks can fit in a particular classroom, and the classroom assignments will be doled out accordingly.
Hi, everyone. Can I just chime in? Because I see there's a question about schedule changes for the high school. The answer to that is it depends. The question was, will we be able to add electives like we've typically done? And yes, you will be able to add electives, but changing some of the other classes may be a little bit more difficult because we are balancing by cohorts. And as Dr. Wilson just mentioned, looking at room capacity. So if you email your counselor and you don't get an answer right away, that's because we're looking at balancing things. So the answer to the question, yes, you can add electives, but know that there might be some times when you can't make the schedule changes as easily as you were able to.
I have a health question regarding hand washing and contact tracing. So we have obviously we're going to be using our sinks to maximum capacity. We actually had specialists come in and we've replaced some of our water heating equipment. But we also have hand sanitizing stations all over the place, including hand sanitizing bottles everywhere around the building. The other question was about shutting a class down if someone has COVID. That's going to depend on what the Department of Health tells us with regards to how close they were. So that is one of the questions we've been most interested in. Which is why we've been in contact with the Department of Health for clarifications. Because what the Department of Health is doing right now is they're dealing with an enormous what if and of a scope that they've never had to tackle before. So they don't necessarily have ready, handy, here's what to do specifically in these situations. However, the basic idea is we contact Department of Health immediately, and we'll get immediate guidance on the classroom setting, the student going to get testing, the results of the test eventually, what we have to clean, who we would have to relocate. So that's got a lot of moving parts. So we would be working hand in hand with the Department of Health for that aspect and the post aspect with regards to, going forward, who were they in contact with? Who do we have to notify? Who's, what other families would we have to notify, whether that be one or a classroom or the school?
We have questions about the full remote option for families. So again, those are the families who have students who are medically vulnerable or a high-risk household member, or they're simply uncomfortable sending their child to school. We are asking that you keep them out on a quarterly basis. So prior to the start of the new quarter, you would have someone reach out to you from the school inquiring whether or not you wanted to return. So that whole process will be communicated once we finalize that. We cannot answer at this time what it will look like. We need the number. We need to know how many students we're working with. So again, that's that August 21st deadline. We're asking you to submit your application by, and then we should have more information for you sometime during the week of August 25th about what that full remote option will look like for the families who want to keep their children at home.
And we are looking to provide as much information as we can, because what we do understand is that we do understand that both of us are asking for something at the same time. You're asking for a description of the program so that you can make a decision as to whether or not to go on the remote option. We understand that. What we're asking for is for you to tell us whether or not you're remote opting so that we could design the program, because a program for 5 kids is a lot different than a program for 100 kids. So we definitely understand that that you would like more information. So what we can say is this, and fold this into the full remote conversation. The plans, the hybrid plan, the full remote plan, and the remote option plan would be using the same bell schedule to the greatest degree possible. Would be getting a much higher degree of live face-to-face interactivity with a teacher than you experienced in the spring. Who specifically will be doing that? Oh, right now on August 14th, I can't answer that. We don't know because what we have is we have a full master schedule with a full teaching staff, teaching full time, every day live, plus not only every day live, plus they're providing synchronous or asynchronous opportunities for the kids that are home. So which staff members are going to be available to teach a variable number of kids? I can't answer that right now. Okay, so but we are working on that. So if you have specific questions, please feel free. But remember, the criteria is going onto that Google form and expressing interest in the remote option.
We have a question about a family who chooses hybrid, but mid-quarter, if they do not feel safe, what are their options? I think that would be similar to if a student got sick and they wanted to go into homebound, but they would have to commit to being out for that entire quarter. Again, I want to remind folks that juniors and seniors without first or second period classes, they do not have to arrive until their actual first scheduled class, and they can leave immediately after their final class of the day. Let's see. Will the system be revisited after the first half of the year? If numbers consistently go down, is there a chance of opening full-time after winter break? Again, that's a decision that will be made at, I believe, the state level. The governor is working with the Department of Health, and he is really the only one, he's the one who set those data points, those thresholds that we have to adhere to about the regional infection rates and the rolling infection rates, so that we know whether we can open or actually physically have to close. So that would ultimately be a decision by the state.
Okay, I've got two. One also regarding guidance from above is about mask types. So our kids and our staff will be required to wear masks indoors. Right now, the guidance says cloth face masks. So if we get specific guidance from the CDC or the Department of Health, and putting masks into two different categories, and then we would do that. So we would make that public so that parents would know what kind of masks they should not send their students with. Like a face shield alone, for example, is not a substitute for a mask. So if you were going to send your child to school with a face shield alone, they still need the mask. So right now it's cloth face mask. Another question I have is concerning opportunities for contact on the home day. I believe that's the way I'm interpreting this question. So yeah, we still will have office hour opportunities. Remember, our staff is going to be doing a lot more than normal, and that's one of the reasons why we created the schedule that we did with the extra zero period, to allow the staff to, if necessary, have contact with their kids while the kids are home on an office hour basis or answer questions.
They cannot answer questions while they're teaching, but perhaps when they're on a prep period or on their lunch period, I know some of them would certainly answer if they're by their computer.
Yeah, and I do want to emphasize one thing about that. So, obviously we were reliant almost solely on email back in the spring.
It's not like that.
So a lot of it will be a lot easier under the hybrid model. But I want you to keep in mind that we need like a 24-hour rule with regards to teachers responding to parents, because again, they are going to be teaching full time all day long, and we need that time to be able to do our work plus communicate.
Has the state provided any information on what would allow schools to open fully without social distancing? Unfortunately, no, they have not. Let's see what else we have.
Assessments. We got a couple questions about assessments. Regarding student cheating, if the test is at home, or using our in-school time. That's one of those fine lines because I said before that we're eager to get our children back into school. The last thing I would want to do is say, all right, welcome back, congratulations, sit down, you're going to take a test. However, yes, think about homework. Kids don't always do their own homework. They get help from older siblings, they get help from mom and dad, they get help from each other, or they get help from the internet. So, we're aware of that. So it's going to be a balance. We're going to be refining our assessments so that we will take a minimal amount of time away from in-person instruction because that time is now, ultra precious to us. At the same time, creating assessments that minimize the chance for unauthentic work. If you think about what the College Board did back in the spring, the AP exams, those high stakes, give you college credit AP exams, they were 45-minute at-homes. So this is a time period where we need to make concessions on one hand, but we're going to do it sensibly.
We previously had a question about plexiglass shields. So I just wanted to state that at the high school and middle school, the teacher desks will have a plexiglass shield around the, no, not anymore.
No, Tina, no, sorry, you mean polycarbonate, not plexiglass.
Polycarbonate, sorry.
We
Polycarbonate,
cannot use plexiglass. We cannot use plexiglass.
polycarbonate shield around them so that this way, if a teacher needs to work one-to-one with a student, they can do so safely.
And that's Dr. Farrar points out, good example, like the tent discussion. There are rules. So, a simple thing like plexiglass, there are fire restrictions on that. Anyone who needs an ID card can get one at the beginning of the year.
Yep. Let's see. One concern is that students will have more questions. We already answered that one. If a student has to quarantine at home for 14 days, what will the instruction look like? We will have more information about that. We've been meeting with teacher groups to explore the use of those technologies that Mrs. Lanza mentioned. And so, they might have the ability to do the board share and the screen share using that annotate technology. So we will share information as that's finalized.
And one more, something I addressed earlier about the dining hall and assigned seats. So on one hand, it's a social opportunity. So I would like not to do that. On the other hand, one of the requirements for contact tracing is we're going to be asked who was the child in contact with. Number one. Number two, if you think about a class worth of kids, half of one of my grades with high school students going in and out of the dining areas, I would think if a student knows where their seat is, it's a much smoother process because they walk in and they go sit down as opposed to scrambling around, waiting to see where their friends sit so they could sit with them. That's going to be one of our new responsibilities with regards to choreographing the process. So that's one of those things as middle level and high school level educators we wouldn't want to do. We may have to. So like I said, we're still considering that.
We have a question about whether or not we will have extra masks on hand. So we will have extra masks on hand in the event that a student forgets one. We also have some families who have been making the masks and who, they have unused masks that they want to donate. We would be happy to accept those as well. We have a question about whether or not we've surveyed families to see how many want the hybrid plan versus the 100% remote. Unfortunately, the state guidance states that we have to provide a plan that has in-person instruction. So I don't think we can offer one or the other. If a family is uncomfortable, again, that full remote option of keeping their children at home on a quarterly basis is available to them.
We have a question about our teachers and how our teachers feel about this, and our staff. I'll say this from the spring till now. We work in partnership with our teaching association, and they've been marvelous. I saw video images of teachers teaching with their 12-month-old on their knee as they're trying to conduct classes from home last year. We had staff members in the building throughout the summer volunteering to help with things like the locker cleanout process. They're helping us out with, if you think about the things Mrs. Lanza discussed, using the new pieces of technology. They've been volunteering their time doing that. We had volunteer groups of teachers come in during the year, during the summer, to play around with rooms and talk about social distancing and mask rules. We're all in this together. No aspect of this is going to work without our community, our teaching staff, and our kids all working in unison. And I'm very proud to say that so far that's happening. But thank you.
We have a question about if a teacher or student tests positive, will the entire class be asked to be tested? So if the DOH contacts us about a positive test, they will give us direction about which proximate, that's that person who's within 6 feet, whether or not, outside of 6 feet, if they need to quarantine themselves or not, and whether or not they need to be tested. So they will let us know, and we have a way of contacting them if we hear about something and have not yet heard from them. So we will follow the directions of the Department of Health.
Yes, and Dr. Wilson, just to add to that, this is a good point for me to remind everyone. On August 10th, the County Department of Health issued 7 pages of Q&A, answers a lot of these questions. If you have not had a chance yet to review it, it's posted on our website, both under the reopening tab and also the coronavirus tab. It answers all of those questions, and that's the direction we're getting from the Westchester County Department of Health right now.
Did we answer, Mrs. Ryan, the schedule change question about ACE and BDF?
Yeah, I did say that we would be able to change schedules or add electives, but changing some of the schedules may be more difficult because of how we're balancing the classes.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes, but it also may take a little bit longer because we have to go through a lot of different things. It used to be a very easy process for us.
So it would be similar to being on a waiting list for a class that's at capacity.
If it is at capacity, yes. Our capacity numbers have changed now because of the maximum seats in a classroom.
Okay. Are there any other questions, you think? Elective classes are meeting by cohort.
And the final one I have is about the remote option, or just Rhinebeck declaring we're not going to bring the kids back and just go remote. If we can bring, go ahead, Dr. Farrow.
Yeah, I can add. I understand the question, and I think it's coming up more now because you're hearing about certain school districts that are opting for that. We're continuing to have dialogue, when I say we, here in the region about that. But the governor has said to us, bring as many kids back as you can in person. He hasn't yet told us not to. You heard our presentation this morning and then previous ones. We are preparing to follow the guidance and bring our children in as we can in person. But again, I caution everyone, it's August 14th and things are changing. Right now, we're opening school on a hybrid model. I said that on Wednesday night, and I'll repeat it again today. But again, remind everyone, day by day, things are changing. So there is conversation about perhaps not doing that, not here in Rhinebeck particular, more generally or globally here in the region. But we are following the guidance from that we're getting from the state right now. Dr. Lutinsky, did you want to add anything to that?
Nope, you said it very well.
Okay.
Okay, so first of all, this will be recorded. So if you have a friend that missed it, perhaps, please direct them to see it on our website. I don't know what the turnaround time in getting this up there, but I'm sure we'll be up soon. 1 week from today at 9:30, there will be a presentation just like this with Principal Tara Goldberg and Principal Mike Scarantino from Daniel Warren and Bellows, respectively, to answer elementary specific questions. And I want to thank every parent who is watching and those of you who have emailed questions in. I hope we have answered them. As Dr. Farrar said, it's August 14th. So, please check your emails for updates. And if things change, we'll notify you. Thank you, everybody. Go ahead.
Yes, and thank you. I just want to echo those sentiments, Dr. Lutinsky, and then thank everyone for participating. And really stress, please, if you have any more questions, particular to your middle or high school, please contact your flexible. Every time here I say the thing, flexibility and patience. We like structure. We're educators. We like schools because they're structured. School is a structured place. We're finding this very difficult to come out and say, we don't know, we're not sure, things might change. We are working and moving forward, providing quality education for our children, no matter what mode we have to deliver it in. So that's where we're at right now. So I thank you again. And as Dr. Lutinsky said, this is going to be recorded, or it has been recorded, and will be posted on our website. So I thank you for that. I thank everyone for participating, and I hope you have a good afternoon and nice weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.